I recently was sent a documentary on the life of Benjamin Netanyahu's brother, Yoni Netanyahu. And he was a lieutenant colonel in the army and unfortunately paid with his life at Entebbe Airport. And many of you might remember, it was even made into a movie based on real facts, the raid on Entebbe. And this was interesting to me because I have been at Entebbe Airport quite a few times in my life because I was born in Uganda. And so my parents and I would travel in and out of the Uganda airport whenever we'd come or go. And also later in my life, when I've been back to Uganda a couple of times, I have been there. And it looks just like it is in that movie, Raid on Entebbe. So it was interesting to me when I was sent this documentary that it highlighted the plight of the Israeli people so well. What it's like to be a young man in Israel. It's not usual. It's not like in North America. It's a real battle. And now, with Prime Minister Netanyahu rising to the place of being tremendous prominence in his country, it's absolutely fascinating that the story of his young brother is one that depicts the plight of Israeli young men. So I'd like to show you a little bit of that documentary. And if you'll just take the time to see what it's like to be Jewish and to grow up having to defend your nation at every turn. You don't have a childhood, quite literally. This is the story of Yoni Netanyahu.
Yoni was the commander of the force which was entrusted with the task of rescue and salvation. The operation was flawless, but to our deep sorrow it entailed a sacrifice of incomparable pain. A bullet had torn the young heart of one of Israel's finest sons, one of its most courageous warriors, one of its most promising commanders, the magnificent Jonathan Netanyahu.
Each and every minute cannot be allowed to pass in vain. I must feel certain that not only at the moment of my death shall I be able to account for the time I have lived, I ought to be ready at every moment of my life to confront myself and say, this is what I've done.
Yoni was born in New York on March 13, 1946, to Sila and Benzion Netanyahu. In those years, Benzion was directing the new Zionist organization's campaign to support the creation of a Jewish state. Sila was of great help to him in his work. When Yoni was 2, the family returned to Israel. In the Jerusalem neighborhood of Talpiot, Yoni's younger brothers were born, Bibi and Ido. Yoni is homesick, but he knows that once he graduates from high school, he will join the Israel Defense Forces along with his old classmates. In July 1964, he boards a plane bound for Israel.
When I saw the country from the plane, I felt a twinge in my heart. Despite everything that's wrong here, and God knows there are many faults, it's our country and I love her as I always have. Jerusalem is more beautiful than ever. Perhaps I'm a bit sentimental because I haven't seen it for so long. Who knows? Dear Mother and Father, well, I'm in the paratroops. The paratroop corps is known as a dangerous place to serve in, but that's not true. It's as dangerous as any other outfit. The drills are hard, but not all that terrible. They say that from Wednesday to Saturday we'll have a march, 25 miles a day, but that doesn't worry me. I've reached the conclusion that anything the Army requires of a soldier I can do.
Actually, just incredible how much He loved Israel and, cherished and felt that it was his heart's compulsion to stand for Israel, knowing what they faced all the time with enemies on every side. A young person's life growing up in Israel is very, very different. And so in this next segment, there is more about his need and that feeling that he needs to fight against terrorism.
In September 1967, Yoni and Tuti arrive in the U.S., where Yoni studies at Harvard. Bibi and Ido are living in Israel. Ido enrolls in high school, while Bibi begins his military service, volunteering for the elite commando unit Sayeret Matkal.
The many acts of terror perpetrated in Israel strengthen my conviction that the sooner I come back, the better, for me personally. Harvard continues to be marvelous, even though I'm impatient to return. And I hope with all my heart that my arm will improve enough for me to be able to go back on reserve duty.
After a year in Boston, Yoni and Tuti return to Israel. Yoni studies mathematics and philosophy at the Hebrew University, but soon feels that he cannot continue living the life of a student.
Beloved father and mother, the situation here is perfectly clear to anyone with eyes in his head. We are marching toward another war. I'm thinking of signing up for 2 years of service.
I think that he wanted to go back to the army because his inner voice told him that he had to do the utmost to defend Israel. And he wanted to join the unit because he saw that we carried out many operations. The raid on Beirut Airport that I took part in, and many, many others. And he simply decided that the unit was at the forefront of the battle against terrorism, which was then, as now, the main struggle.
Then, as now, the main struggle. So you can see that in the life of Yoni Netanyahu and Benjamin Netanyahu, growing up in Israel, they knew that their plight was to defend a nation. If you grow up in North America, you play soccer and you hang out with your friends, and you go to the park and you go on vacations and you watch your parents live a very safe world. That is not what it's like for any young Jewish person. So this next segment is going to lead us into more of Yoni's life. It's not too long. I pray that you'll bear with me to understand this is a real story of a real family whose son, Benjamin Netanyahu, eventually becomes the prime minister in 1996. But that is 20 years after the loss of his dearly beloved brother.
On Sunday, June 27, 1976, Air France Flight 139 departs from Athens with 245 passengers, 83 of whom are Israelis. A few minutes after takeoff, Arab and German terrorists hijack the plane and force the French pilot to turn south to Africa. Hours later, the plane lands at Entebbe Airport on the shores of Lake Victoria, more than 2,000 miles from Israel. Uganda's dictator Idi Amin colludes from the outset with the terrorists.
And
June 27th.
I wanted to just comment here that is such a familiar face to me, Idi Amin. We have home video of Idi Amin. My dad, he captured it. He was actually sort of in media. My dad had a camera and he loved it, 8mm, I think. And he would capture Idi Amin in real time. One time he landed in a helicopter. We all went down to see him in Masaka, Uganda. And my dad pulled us up onto, somebody's vehicle so that we could kind of see Idi Amin land. And on our video, our home video, he gets out of the helicopter and begins walking across the grass, and he looks right over at my dad filming him because my dad's literally one of the only white people in the whole place. So he was, spotted. My father later was the only white person in the town square when they slit the throat of the mayor of Masaka. So that was in about 1973. And this man right here, Idi Amin, a brutal man, he was a Muslim who ultimately killed 500,000 of the Ugandans, kicked all of the Indians and the white people out. And it's quite ironic because I have many friends now from India, and cultures different than mine, but we were from Uganda. And I've met people that were born in the same hospital as myself, which was Malago Hospital in Uganda. So this man was brutal. And when this took place, we had already been deported from Uganda. They came and took my father away late one night in 1973. Many of the Indians had already been forced out. And my dad was taken, and my mom and us kids were told that we had 48 hours or so to get out. And so that was the end of my time as a kid in Uganda. I didn't fully understand the devastation. I didn't understand the trauma that this was to my family. My mom hid that from us. Of course, we didn't know. But this was very traumatizing for my mom when they came to the house and took my dad, because he had witnessed that murder, and they didn't know, my mom didn't know if she'd ever see him alive again. So that was my mom's plight that we had no idea of. So we did leave, and a few days later, we met up with my dad in Kenya, and it was a very, very happy reuniting. My mom broke into tears and, met with my dad, and I thought she was being a little bit emotional. We just saw him, but I didn't quite understand that it was such a serious and brutal time. So this was not a good man. So when that airliner was hijacked and taken to Uganda, Idi Amin was all in to act against the Jews. And so it's just an interesting crossroads with my personal story. So let's continue.
June 27th, the day of the hijacking. Yoni's final week begins.
He would always say that if he were responsible and careful enough to see what was coming, he wouldn't be killed.
The second day of the hijacking. The terrorists issue an ultimatum: the release of 53 terrorists held in jails in Israel, West Germany, Kenya, France, and Switzerland. If the demand is not met by 2 p.m. July 1st, the hostages at Entebbe will be executed.
I heard from him more than once that giving in to terrorism was absolutely unacceptable.
The third and fourth days of the hijacking. The German and Arab terrorists separate the Israelis from the non-Israeli hostages, adding to the group of Israelis some non-Israeli Jews. On Wednesday, they start freeing non-Israeli hostages. A Jewish woman from France said afterwards, "I heard a loud cry in German, 'Jews to the right,' and I thought, what's the sense of having a state of Israel if this kind of thing can recur today?" Yoni sends a few of his staff officers to a preliminary consultation held in the Army's General Command, which begins collecting information and discussing possible methods of rescue. He knows that if there will be a military operation at Entebbe, he and his unit would lead it.
He didn't believe the government of Israel would have the political courage to make this decision. But if you're asking me whether he would have decided in favor of the operation had he been prime minister, the answer is yes. It was clear to him that if anybody can do an operation like this, it's us.
The fifth day of the hijacking, 2 days before the mission. The relatives of the hostages demand that the Israeli government give in to the terrorists. Yitzhak Rabin and his government decide to negotiate with the terrorists, who postpone their ultimatum to Sunday, July 4th. Meanwhile, vital information begins to arrive from the released hostages, enabling the formulation of a plan for a rescue operation. Chief Paratroop and Infantry Officer Don Shamron receives an order from the Deputy Chief of Staff, Yekutiel Adam, to prepare a rescue mission. He calls Yoni to his office.
We came with Yoni to Shamron's headquarters. Everything was still in the realm of the unknown, an initial stage of gathering information. After that meeting, we returned to our base and went into Yoni's office for our first conference.
The burden of the operation was given to Yoni's unit. He began to plan the operation with very great intensity.
Late that night, the plan of operation was made. That was the one we carried out eventually.
I have a feeling, and it's not absolute, that this doubt whether there will in fact be a mission gnawed at him all the time.
The sixth day of the hijacking, the Israeli army and Sayeret Matkal continue their preparations for the mission.
During Friday and Saturday, we decided how the operation would be broken down and staffed. We did model exercises. We determined the final methods of operation, including the division of responsibilities. We arranged for all other details of the raid, including the special equipment we would need. Yoni was the conductor of this orchestra of preparations.
He worked on this with a magnifying glass, every soldier and every spot. He rehearsed his unit, he did all the model exercises, and he spearheaded the operation. He tied together the various components of the mission and gave the briefings to the forces themselves so that this mission would succeed.
When we would meet, he was very, very, very tired. He literally fell asleep in the shower, standing with his head to the wall, letting the water stream down on him.
Friday, late afternoon, a day before the raid, Yoni is called for a one-on-one meeting with Defense Minister Shimon Peres.
I very much wanted to check with Yoni, to hear from Yoni what the extent of the risk we were taking was, and whether the risk was acceptable. Besides that, he was very knowledgeable about the facts. And by the facts, I mean who are the men who are going to fight? What are their abilities?
The defense minister pushes for the raid. At midnight Friday, the Hercules Transport Squadron, paratroop and Golani infantry soldiers, and a force from the unit carry out a model exercise for Chief of Staff Mota Gur. Gur wants to hear from the leading officers what they think are the chances of success.
At the end of the model exercise, Mota Gur called us and asked Yoni for his opinion. Yoni told him 4 words: "It can be done." I saw Mota's reaction, and I'm sure that those 4 words gave the upper military echelon and the Chief of Staff the confidence to go forward and press for the governmental go-ahead.
Saturday morning, he slept at home and got up early. He went downstairs and got into his car. I wanted to tell him something. I ran down the stairs and called him, but at that very moment, he had already turned on the car engine and started driving. It was like a scene from a movie, me calling Yoni, Yoni in the car, driving off, with me not being able to talk to him.
Good that I have you, my brewer. And good that I have somewhere to lay my weary head. I know I'm not with you enough and that it's hard for you to be alone so much. But I trust you, me, both of us, to succeed in living our youth to the fullest. You to live your youth and your life, and I, my life and the flicker of my youth. It'll be okay.
July 3rd, 1976, the day of the raid.
We believed very much in Yoni's ability to lead the mission. He instilled in his men the motivation and the ability to succeed.
The force takes off at noon from Tel Aviv Airport and makes its way to Sharm el-Sheikh at the southern tip of the Sinai Desert, which was then in Israel's hands. Once there, Yoni takes his men aside and gives them a briefing they will never forget.
He gave the best briefing I've ever heard. A no-nonsense talk, accurate, focusing exactly on the points that will later on be problematic.
That we are responsible for Jews wherever they are. That we have the initiative and the perseverance, the courage and the daring.
He explained that there will be wounded, but told us that the most important thing was to run as quickly as possible and reach the hostages, regardless of anything else that happened.
That we are the envoys of the State of Israel. A message of Zionism, period.
the 4 planes take off from the Sinai airstrip, even before the government gives the final go-ahead for the operation. They fly along the Red Sea at low altitude to avoid radar detection by the Saudis and Egyptians. 3 of the planes carry the unit's soldiers, with Yoni and his assault force in the lead plane. A tense calm permeates the group of men. They hardly talk. The moment of landing is near, and each man is thinking of what is about to happen. The planes approach Entebbe in darkness.
In 15 minutes, we'll be going to battle. Then it's 10 minutes, then 9, then 8, and the time gets shorter. There was a reddish light in the plane. Instead of taking care of himself and preparing his gear, Yoni climbs on top of the jeeps, moving from the Mercedes backwards, and goes from one soldier to another, shaking the men's hands, smiling, patting a few on the back, saying a kind word here and there. He went by all of us and shook everyone's hand. It was as if he knew what would happen to him in another 5 minutes.
The wheels of the plane touch the tarmac of the airport. The Ugandans at the control tower do not realize that an Israeli force has just landed at Entebbe.
The plane stopped, and we drove out in our vehicles. Then there was total silence, total darkness. We realized, that's it. We're here. And now we must carry out our mission.
The Mercedes and the 2 Land Rovers make their way on the runways. After a mile or so, the Mercedes turns left to approach the old terminal where the hostages are held.
About 200 meters from the old terminal, 2 Ugandan soldiers appeared. One of them raised his rifle, aiming at the Mercedes.
He pointed his rifle toward the Mercedes, and Yoni gave an order to approach him.
The plan called for bringing them down with silencers.
Yoni and one of his officers fire with silenced pistols at the guard. Despite being hit, the guard does not fall. The men in the jeep shoot him again to eliminate any danger he might pose. The Mercedes lunges forward, with the jeeps close behind. Yoni orders the driver to stop in front of the control tower near the hostage terminal. He orders everyone to exit the car and run forward.
At this stage, we left the car. We got to the edge of the building. Most of the force ran along the wall. Then the officer leading them stopped.
The force stalled. Yoni urged the officer on, then pulled us forward.
They were shooting at us from inside the terminal. Yoni went down. I saw him fall.
Lying in front of the terminal, mortally wounded in the chest from a burst of Kalashnikov gunfire. Yoni is unable to see that within seconds, his soldiers kill the terrorists and free the hostages. For a moment, at the sound of heavy gunfire, he tries to get up, but to no avail. The blood quickly drains from his veins. At the entrance of the evacuating plane to which he is taken, Yoni is pronounced dead.
Before boarding the plane at Ben Gurion Airport at the Air Force Transport Base, Yoni came to me, hugged me, and said, "I'm not coming back from this one. I have a bad feeling about it."
I think it was somewhere in the middle of the night, maybe around 2 a.m., that the telephone rang. And then I said this to my wife. "It's Ido, and he's calling to tell me that Yoni is dead." And it was Ido. And he told me that Yoni had been killed.
I was struck the whole time during this documentary, just the price that is paid, the excellency of these soldiers, how they train, how hard they train. Sometimes, walking the 25 miles per day just to be fit enough because the terror is real. And these are real people that have paid a very high price. And that took place there in Entebbe was the end of Yoni's life. And Prime Minister Netanyahu faced a real pain in his personal journey from his brother's loss, being an excellent, absolutely excellent soldier and commander. And yet he was the one that was taken. And it was interesting that people said it was almost as if he knew that he was going to be going, some things that he had said to his wife and some things that he had said to these others. So one final thing is this is a clip off Fox News of Benjamin Netanyahu, now Prime Minister, but talking about that moment where he got the call and the effect that it had on his life.
My world collapsed, but all I could think of at the time was that I have to reach my parents. My father was teaching at Cornell University, and I had to reach him and my mother. And so I drove all night from Boston to Ithaca. It was a horrible thing. Came to the path of their home in Ithaca in the morning. Saw my father, who was a professor, walking back and forth, sort of lost in thought. His hands clasped behind his back, sort of walking back and forth. And all of a sudden, through the living room window, he sees me walking up the path, and he has this look of surprise which changed in a heartbeat. And he understood, and he understood. He knew. He knew, and I came in, and he, and I heard my mother scream, and it was actually worse than hearing about Yoni's death. It's often said that the worst thing you can do as a prime minister or as a commander in the army is to tell a family that they lost their son. But now I was telling my parents that they lost their son, my older brother. I have to say that this was clearly the most difficult moment in my life.
Wow. Just interesting to see how real life has been, that Netanyahu himself has faced such pain. And I believe that's why he has striven so hard to bring peace at this time. And I know he has his detractors, but I often say to anyone who says to me, oh, he's a war criminal or this and that, I say, well, what is the worst thing that, you have to say about what he's done? And basically they don't have anything. Or if they do, there is actually a different side to that. And mostly the people who don't honor the plight of the Jewish people are those who are not really investigating or listening to their stories, to the things that have happened to them. And also, I would have to say that the speeches that Prime Minister Netanyahu has done at the UN have been some of the finest ever presented by world leaders, discussing the most difficult of situations that little tiny Israel, the size of New Jersey, this little tiny country where the Lord God has said he will, in fact, preserve them, and they will outlast. They are the true survivors, and we honor that, and we pray for peace in Israel. just before we go, there was an article that was done on this, and I wanted to share a couple of these mysteries with you. These are 10 lesser known facts about the Entebbe raid, also known as Operation Thunderbolt or Operation Entebbe, which took place July 3rd and 4th, 1976. Mossad's critical intelligence role, the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad gathered vital information by debriefing released hostages, including Patricia Martel, who faked a miscarriage to be released in Benghazi. Her detailed account of the hijackers' numbers and weapons was crucial for planning the raid. Kenya's secret support, Israel relied on Kenya's cooperation to refuel its C-130 Hercules planes. At Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, Kenyan Minister of Agriculture Bruce Mackenzie persuaded President Jomo Kenyatta to assist, despite the risk of retaliation from Uganda's Idi Amin. And of course, he was a terrorizing man. Imitation of Idi Amin's motorcade to approach the terminal undetected, the Israeli commandos used a black Mercedes limousine and Land Rovers, mimicking Idi Amin's typical motorcade, complete with Ugandan flags. This deception helped them to get close to the terminal before engaging. So this is absolutely fascinating, the way that it all went down. And I feel that sometimes people are dehumanized. And I think that's what's happened with the people of Israel. That's what happened in the Holocaust with Hitler. The Jews were dehumanized, when in actual fact, they're very real people who've suffered loss, pain, and no less, the Prime Minister of Israel suffered this tremendous pain in his life. And I just have such admiration and respect for those who've had to live at war for their entire lives. Every Jew is familiar with the sirens, at least the ones that are in Israel, with the fear, the trauma of having to defend your country nonstop from terrorists. This tiny little country. And it's been very sad to see that even giving Gaza to the Palestinians in 2005, it was meant as a peace offering. And in payback for that has been nothing but trouble. So we celebrate what is going on there today, and we do pray that there will be some pieces put into place that will bring much more stability to Israel. We do look at the Word of God, and we know that there could be trying times, but yet we stand in the hope and in the name of the Lord. My website is Laura-Lynn.tv. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a little bit of a storytelling day, and we do celebrate with Israel. For those of you who support us, we really appreciate it. We are not given funds from any big organization. We are just people who believe that we need to tell the truth with courage at this hour, and that's why we do it. So Laura-Lynn.tv, there are ways that you can support us through PayPal and Zelle, e-transfer, things like that. We appreciate it very much. For anybody who would like some fenbendazole or Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, please contact Mia at SozoHealth at proton.me. And also for your blood cleanser, this is a phenomenal product. I mean, I used it, and within 10 days, my blood was cleaned. And when I went to have my live blood analysis done, my blood had all kinds of disgusting things in it. Little things swimming around. I mean, I was slightly horrified. And that was all from one little dot that they took from my finger. And the red blood cells were clumping in different areas. Like you can see here, this is pretty severe. But parasites, all kinds of toxins from the things that we've been through in the last few years get into your blood. But with this natural toxin, and this is nothing you've ever known about, it's new. And within 10 to 14 days, this is what your blood will look like, because this is what my blood looked like. I did the tests before and after to see if it was true, And it is. And that's why I bring it to you. I believe in this 100%. naturesupplement3@gmail.com. It's a premium toxic cleanse. I hope that you will figure it out.